Councillor Hettywood, a member for Riverside Ward and a member of this committee.
I'm Councillor Laura Robertson-Collins, Councillor Greenbank Ward, and now a member of this committee, but I haven't been up till now, so thank you for letting me on.
Councillor Carlson for Croxteth, member of this committee. Alison Clark, member of the committee.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Liam Robinson, one of the councillors for Kensington and Fairfield, and a member of this committee.
Councillor Barry Kushner, councillor for Norris Green.
Councillor Richard Kemp, gegging in because my colleagues couldn't attend tonight.
Sorry, Chair, I forgot to add I am a member of this committee.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Kemp is here as a councillor, but he is not a member of this committee. Here we have another member who has just arrived of this committee. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Councillor Stephanie Pitchers for St Michael's.
Thank you. And the officers, please.
Chris Lomas, Assistant Director for Environment.
Karen Edwardiaka, Interim Chief Officer for Highways.
Stephen Rimmer, Highways at Divisional Manager.
And we have Cabinet Member.
Councillor Dan Barrington, Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, Transport and Environment.
I'm Anne Coy from Committee Services.
Thank you all. We have some members of public as well, which is always welcome. Now, before we start with the business, let's please remember Councillor Tim Jeeves, who sadly passed and who was a member of this committee and who was also a passionate climate activist. So if we could please have a minute's silence now. Thank you. Thank you all for this respect. Please, members of the committee are reminded that they should only be seated on the green flagged seats and the masks are required to be worn when moving around the building, and this meeting is being live streamed. Do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Alan Tormey, Sam Campbell and Colleen Martin.
Any other apologies? Okay, thank you. In terms of declarations of interest, so does anyone have any pecuniary or significant prejudicial interest that may have in any item on the agenda, please? No, thank you. So may I please refer us now to the minutes of our last meeting, which was in August. I was not there, so I cannot move these minutes. Are there any matters arising so far as they relate to this committee? Yes, please, Councillor Barry Kushner.
Thanks, Chair. There were two things which weren't. One wasn't recorded correctly in the minutes, and that was a question to Stephen about the procurement process and scoring a tender. That would include track record with previous council contracts, and it was a request to go back to procurement to get some further advice on that. That was the first one for this meeting. The second thing I raised, which also wasn't recorded, was a request for the number of jobs created and businesses assisted through the connectivity schemes and particularly Strand 1, and for that to be brought back to this committee as well. So they're both a correction in the minutes, but there are also matters arising just in terms of getting a response to both of those issues.
Is it possible to get a response over these issues now? No. Okay, so could this be recorded and then we can get a response eventually? Thank you.
Yeah. Stephen has a response to one of them.
Apologies, Steve.
Okay. Yes, I did speak to our procurement colleagues, and unfortunately we can't take previous track record into account when we're scoring at the submissions.
Chair, can we, I'm a bit disappointed that we haven't got, I accept that answer. I think I might take issue with it still, but thank you for bringing that back. But the question about the jobs created, I mean, everything that we do is obviously within the context of what is our inclusive growth plan, now our city plan, and obviously everything in terms of our investment that we get value for money from commitments that are made through social value, elements of a tender submission. That should be reflected in the number of jobs that are created and businesses assisted. So I'm disappointed that that hasn't come back to the committee today, because it was a specific question that I asked last time, and I just ask that if that information could come before the next meeting and could be circulated to to committee members in the meantime, please.
Okay, is that okay, Karen?
I'm not too clear on what the question is. Is the question, do we incorporate social value into our procurement process? The answer to that is yes. Or would you like to see the numbers and the types of social value that we include?
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. The question was specific. It was, what are the number of jobs, apprenticeships, and businesses, local businesses, that have secured contracts under the connectivity schemes, but particularly the Strand 1 development?
Okay, may I suggest, I wasn't there at the last meeting, but may I suggest, please, Barry, if you could put this into writing, and then we can make sure that there is an answer coming back here. Is that okay?
Just to add, Chair, that we do have that data, so it won't be an issue supplying it. So.
Okay, thank you. Great. So if we can have that in writing and then share to all of us as members, that would be great. Thank you very much. Yes, please. Yes, through Anne as well. Thank you.
So sorry, Chair. If Anne's recorded what I've asked, do I need to do that? I mean, I'm happy to do that, but if it's recorded, then.
Okay, the reason why I'm suggesting this, because obviously there is a time until the minutes are done again, so, just to be quick and so that we get this through, as soon as we can, yeah?
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, please.
Yeah, just another matter arising on page 27 with the questions and responses. Just on the transport strategy, who is it that's developing it and how can we feed into this? Is it being developed by officers? And what are the key dates for it? Is it something that's going to come to this committee? Like, I know that we've got active travel scheduled in March next year. Is it something that could come to the committee for them?
Yes, please, Karen.
So my team has been quite busy over the last few months, but we do have a draft brief that we're developing across the service to go out to consultancy, who will be undertaking a transport strategy and developing that. As part of that transport strategy process, they will be engaging with communities, with members and so on and so forth. And it also needs to align with the city plan. So there will be opportunities for you to input into that transport strategy and in terms of shaping it and making sure that we are delivering on our commitments. In terms of timelines, I haven't got quite timelines. I'm hoping by Christmas we'll be in a position where we might have a consultant in place that will then start the engagement process on the plan.
Okay, thank you. You satisfied with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other matters arising? Or not at the we are discussing the minutes right now. Were you there?
Just a very quick one. Why are we taking account of the city plan, as you suggested, when the city plan isn't a strategic document that has been approved by this city council?
So the city plan, in terms of our commitments as officers, in terms of our alignment, details what and how, and a broad brush, how we deliver some of our commitments as officers. So that there needs to be a sort of golden thread that comes from the city plan that feeds into our transport plan in terms of what we deliver. So there are a number of key priorities in the city plan that I duty bound to deliver. So that will then form and feed into the transport plan and into our business plans and our action plans as a service. It's standard that you normally do across most local authorities, and that's the reason why I mentioned the city plan, because there's a number of commitments in there to do with a vast number of things, like we talked about social value and so on and so forth.
I know what the city plan is, but I also know what it isn't. It isn't a strategic plan.
Okay, can we just finish with this conversation now? Okay, Laura, you have some point to make?
And I apologise because I wasn't at last meeting either, so I'm sorry, but as Lindsay's raised a really valid point, and just some clarification on how elected members are going to be consulted, because I take your point on the general consultation, and you mentioned communities and so on, which is obviously a general external process, but just to clarify in terms of elected members, because I think that's not clear yet, or it might not be known yet, but how's that going to happen?
And may I just add, because this also links in with the UNOMIA report and with our commitment to have a consultation around the roadmap towards 2030. So obviously these things are interconnected. So I'm assuming that there's a discussion there between these two consultations.
Yeah, I'm going to pass the question over to Councillor Barrington for him to inform us in terms of how we engage with members.
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Robertson Collins, can you just, can you just...
That was a good answer, and Dan's going to, it was about consultation with elected members specifically, and then Lena's clarified about the potentially two strands of this, and how is this actually hanging together is a good question, but seems to have been dumped on Dan anyway.
Obviously, I'm very keen to have the input of members, and I think particularly through this select committee, make a good start with that. But obviously, we want all members to engage with that, develop plans to do.
Okay, great, thank you. But it is something that we are returning to a lot, you know, whether we are doing it as the select committee members or we are opening it up to all members as well. So I think some clarification around consultation processes would be good. Okay, I think we can move on from minutes, and can we conclude on these minutes? Are they approved, please? Yeah, great, agreed. Okay, so moving on. Sorry. And we haven't even started. Sorry. Okay, so we are now moving on to cabinet members update. So we will hear from Dan, and I assume that you have all read this report, which has been circulated in really good time for all of us. So can I please ask Councillor Dan Barrington to introduce his update? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, a written report was circulated with the agenda, so I'll just pick up a few key points. So we've recently launched our Clean Air Survey so that we can gather thoughts around transport and air quality. And those responses will be used to help us inform our clean air plan that's being developed. So that's happening at the moment, and you can get involved online. We are looking at ways to promote that more, and if everyone can be promoting that in your own sort of communities as well, because we really want to get a good response around that. We took part in Car Free Day on the 22nd of September, and we organised a road closure on Lark Lane along with a number of activities. I really want us to do more next year, so we are starting the plans early, and I want us to look much more at not just closing roads, but at a bigger campaign, particularly around using public transport more and active travel. And I want us to work with the combined authority to put pressure on bus companies and train operators for them to look at making public transport free on that day, or at least at a considerably reduced costs, to encourage people to leave the cars at home on that day, and then hopefully encourage them to continue to use public transport as well. There was a request at the last committee around recycling rates on a ward by ward basis. Now, I'd already asked for us to look at getting this data again. As we've sort of delved into this, we found out that the Recycling and Waste Authority have changed the sort of system that they use to capture that data. But we are now getting a system in place so that we can get that ward data back, because we know that's really important data for councillors to get. And hopefully we will have that soon, and we'll continue to send that out on a regular basis like we did in the past. We had the your report earlier in the year. On our next stage is now the development of that net zero carbon 2030 plan, which is going to give us the route map through to 2030 and set out the challenges and the strategic approach, the aims, the solutions and the actions that we need to be looking at. I think one of the key things throughout it is the need for us to work collaboratively with partner organisations, businesses and residents to meet our goal. It's not something that we can do alone as the council. We really need everyone working together. So it's hoped that that report will be published later this month. I attended a meeting with Mayor Joanne, central councillors and local residents and businesses to look at some of the ongoing issues around the bus hub, and we are hoping that we can try and make some improvements to the situation there. And there's a fuller update in the highways report that details some of the things that we're looking at. As part of the best value inspection report, one of the things that was highlighted was that the way the highways service is operated, we needed a change in structure. So we've now put in place an interim structure before we look to do the actual full restructure of the service. And this will give us an opportunity to trial and test out those ways so that we can sort of do an assessment ahead of the full restructure process. I was really unhappy to discover recently that the bus gate on Hanover Street has not been in operation. I've instructed that this is a key priority for us to get resolved, but unfortunately it's not going to be something that's going to be fixed quickly. Due to the time that's elapsed around this, we are going to need to get a new experimental traffic order in place. And we also still need to get the approval of the Vehicle Certification Agency, so that actually allows us to enforce the bus gate. This is a really frustrating situation, and I share people's frustrations around this. We need to prioritise buses within the city centre, so it's vital that we get this sorted out, but it's vital that we've got the right legal processes in place so that we can follow this. A report went through Cabinet around Section 106, and there's a lot of projects around parks, and there's more details in the upcoming parks report with details of all the different schemes in that. We did do some carbon literacy training which Councillor Laura Robertson-Collins organised earlier this year and last winter. I am looking to do some further sessions because I know not all members were able to do that, and obviously since then we've had an election and new members have come on, so we will be getting some dates out for them in autumn and winter for those who couldn't make the other sessions. We've now got plans for an alternative temporary cycle lane on West Derby Road, and we'll be going out to consultation soon on that. We've also given assurances to government following a letter that they sent recently to the Combined Authority. So the temporary cycle lane on West Derby Road was funded by the council itself. It wasn't using active travel funds that the government provided. And we did remove it due to the water main burst on Prescott Road. And we are committed to reintroducing a cycle lane in the area. So I hope the government will take those reassurances. As members know and reported back at the last select committee as well, we still have ongoing issues with lakes in parks. And we've recently replaced the borehole pumps again to feed the lakes at Stanley Park, Greenbank Park and Lark Hill with fresh aerated water. A meeting has taken place recently with Scouts Flower House, the council and LSSL to look at LSSL staff getting training in the maintenance of wildflowers. And it's really important that we get our staff trained up on this and we pass on that knowledge so that these areas are maintained and managed properly. And there's more updates on parks further on in the agenda as well. I was really lucky last month to go and visit the new Merseyrail trains. It's fantastic that we've got a brand new fleet of publicly owned trains, and it's a key part of Steve Rotherham's plans around having an integrated transport system. I think one of the really important things with these trains is the way that they've been co-designed, working with local people, and that they're going to be step-free access, which is a first in the country, along with onboard Wi-Fi, improved passenger information screens, and more space for wheelchairs and bicycles as well. Obviously, since I've published my report, things happened around Lime Street yesterday. So it's very unfortunate that the contractors NMCN, who were carrying out the works on Lime Street, went into administration yesterday. We know we are at the beginning of a journey of improvement within our highways department, and it's important that we look at this very carefully and learn lessons for the future. When I came into post, decisions had already been made, contracts agreed, and work was happening on the ground. I now believe that the unfortunate situation we find ourselves in presents us with an opportunity to reflect on the design of Lime Street. We have declared a climate emergency, and improving our public transport and encouraging more people to use public transport will be a key driver in us meeting our net zero goals. I have concerns over the restrictions created for bus movement by the Lime Street designs. I've instructed the Chief Interim Highways Officer to carry out an urgent review of the design. I'm glad to see that Councillor Robertson Collins has brought an emergency motion later on for the committee, and I hope members of the committee will support that motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dan, for the report. We have a few questions. Okay, so we are going with first Laura, then Liam, then Stephanie, then Lindsay. Sorry, Maria, but you're not a member, so I will take the members first. You are? Clark, yeah, okay, so Alison Barry then. I don't know, Maria. You can, but after we finish with the members, yeah? Okay. So have you got your order right there? Everyone is wanting to ask questions. Okay, fine.
I'm there, so I definitely got that. Thank you, Chair. And can I really thank the Cabinet member? It's a really comprehensive report and a really accessible report as well. It's really written in helpful language and covering a lot of areas. My first time at this committee, So I have got quite a few questions because I've missed at least 2 meetings. There's a lot of ground to catch up on here. But absolutely, it's fantastic to see Councillor Barrington in this position because I know how committed he is to a lot of this agenda. I'm extremely, I'll say there's about 5 things, I'm sorry. Extremely disappointed to hear that Dan is disappointed about Hanover Street when he was appointed, because 2 years ago, I said exactly the same thing. I was appointed in July 2019 and found out that nothing had progressed on the Hanover Street properly, even though that went through Cabinet in 2018. It is absolutely fundamental to the whole bus movement and bus prioritisation of the city centre that we get the gate on there. Things have improved. I can see just as you walk down and as you, when you're in the city, you can see that things are better because of the publicity around it. But the fact that it still isn't resolved, so how many Cabinet members later, I think Councillor Mumby was the Cabinet member in 2018 who brought this in, and we're about 5 Cabinet members on from there now. It is really disappointing. From the point of view of the fact that it hasn't been implemented properly, I know there are other people in this room who have put a lot of effort into this, and I include Councillor Liam Robinson because he's involved in it from the bus side. That buses such as the 80 and the 75 are now having to go down Berry Street and Duke Street. So my own residents and myself, literally my bus route, has been binned off Hanover Street because we haven't got this sorted out in time, and there was no reason it couldn't have been done 3 years ago. I absolutely welcome Dan's comments on Lime Street. It's such a welcome and refreshing thing to hear. Thank you so much. As you say, I have brought a motion. I don't know if you want to move that up the agenda, maybe, Chair, because we've got the highways report. But thank you for taking a look at that. In terms of integrated transport for the 21st century, I know how committed Dan is to that. It's really, really good to hear your comments on that. Just some more positive things. Thank you for acknowledging the work that myself and some other Cabinet colleagues did on the School Streets project. I'm really pleased that we got a School Streets street closed at Greenbank Primary, and I'm more than happy to support any other members who want to try and take that up. It did take me 3 years, I admit, but I'm really, really pleased to get that over the line, and I think it's really important that we roll that out across the city now. So it was kind of difficult in terms of the legals and stuff, but it's been absolutely welcomed by the school and by the residents who live in that street and by the parents. There's been almost no complaints about it, and it has transformed coming out of school there, and parents just love it because they can stand and talk and children can come out safely. It's absolutely transformed that. With the car-free days, we did actually pass the motion a couple of years ago, but obviously we then hit COVID after the really positive event we had with Wovertree High Street to have regular events. So again, I welcome your comments on that, but I think, if you can check back on that motion that we agreed cross-party to have regular things which were, celebrating local businesses and all the rest of that. So that would have been in the autumn of 2019 because that followed on from the Wavertree High Street very positive event that we held at that point. But certainly I don't want to have car-free day once a year. Every day should be a car-free day. And the other thing to really thank Dan for putting into his report, thank him for support on, and something very close to my heart was around the wildflowers and the biodiversity increase across the city. Absolutely lovely to see Richard in the room. He is hiding at the back there as a member of the public, but Richard is not merely a member of the public, although nor is Chrissy either, actually. Richard has been working on this for decades, getting on his own long before it became trendy, and it was an absolute pleasure to work with him when I was Cabinet member, but also in my ward. And I think as a committee, we have passed a motion in the past when I was Cabinet member about thanking Scouts Flower House for the work they've done in the city. But just because he's here personally, I'd like to give him my personal thanks and hope the committee would thank him as well. Thank you, Chair.
Was there a question? No. Okay, so that was a statement, long statement.
Can we have more school streets? Can we have more wildflowers? Can we have more car-free days? Can we get the buses back on Lime Street? For God's sake, get Hanover Street sorted out.
Okay, great. Well, that was a great long statement, but yeah, it is very much appreciated, and I agree. Yes, let's thank Richard here for the wildflowers and all the effort that's been made around that. So thank you very much. Okay, yes, I think the point that you made, Laura, there about the street closures with school is very important, and I know that's what we are all in our local wards fighting for. I mean, us as in Anfield as well. So that is something that we should be really aiming for, more of these road closures around school time. So that would be something we could all start working on. Okay, thank you. Let me take someone else as well, because it was Liam, and then I will let Dan respond, because otherwise we will be here forever.
Thanks very much. I will make some similar points, but I will ask questions as well. So kind of, but very much endorse everything that Laura just said. First of all, I was glad you like the new trains, Dan. They're absolutely fantastic. But genuinely make sure you take some of that credit as well, mate, because you've been part of that journey from when you were involved at Mersey Travel as well. And kind of what we've all collectively delivered there is best in class for this country. So kind of make sure you take a good slice of that credit as well, mate. Focusing on kind of some of the bus related bits, I also welcome the opportunity in terms of what you're going to look at with regard to Lime Street and allowing some bus priority there. I hope it's not just confined to Lime Street as well, particularly when we're talking about the transport plan the city council's pulling together. I hope we're going to be really serious about bus priority in the city centre and across the whole of the city, because I'll be dead blunt about this, as the city region and Steve as our mayor is looking at re-regulating the bus network. We have to make sure that the bus is the priority on our road network. It's as simple as that, and that's for really strong social justice imperatives, but also because of the climate emergency as well. We ain't going to be able to deal with the climate emergency if we're not prioritising public transport. And I suppose that kind of nicely comes onto the bus gate on Hanover Street, in the sense that I'm deeply unhappy that it's got to this situation, not least because there was a lot of hard work by Laura, by Sharon Connor as your predecessor, and others, to make sure what was an agreed cabinet decision was implemented. And not just because people like me have got a fixation with buses, and I'll happily admit that, but because we know from the consultation we did, hundreds of bus users were telling us how important services going down Hanover Street is to them. And frankly, for this not to have happened is unacceptable. But let's turn the negative into a positive. Can you give any broad timescales on when we will see it up and running fully? Because I think that's the key thing we all want to understand. And the final bit is to echo a similar point, but to put it in a bit more of a direct point with regards to sort of car-free days. Certainly in my combined authority role, more than happy to work with you on how we can leverage cheaper fares and other deals and offers to make sure people are using public transport on car-free day. But how quickly could we bring together a programme of appropriate road closures on certain dates? Kind of, I know in my own ward, there's residents around Holt Road who'd like a similar situation that we've had on Lark Lane, we've had on Wavertree High Street. I'm sure there's other communities right across the city would like similar things. But if you also look at other cities like Edinburgh, for example, that periodically shut a number of roads almost once a month as a key part of making our streets much more livable and not being dominated by cars, how quickly, genuinely, could we pull together a programme of events that could see realistically one road closed for a day once a month, possibly? There's a huge community opportunity around that. So I hope that's kind of framed a number of questions in terms of when we'll see action on Hanover Street particularly, but also when we can pull together a programme of car-free streets across the city.
Thank you, Liam. So Dan, please. And also if you could answer the question around the school closures as well, roads around the schools.
Yeah, thanks. Bus priority, it will be a priority within the transport plan. It's definitely a political priority for me. It's all things that I've been feeding into Karen, so that she's aware that needs to be within the transport plan. I agree with your comments on the bus gate. I'm really unhappy that we're in the situation we are. In terms of road closures, I definitely want to see us do that more regularly. And we will look at trying to get a programme of that, and I mean crucially work with ward councillors as well to identify areas as well that you think will work, because it's really important that we do that engagement as well within that. That's really important. I don't know if Karen can give an update on the time scales on the bus gate.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So in the, we responded to the questions, it mentions 2 to 3 months. That's because we do need to submit a certificate. It's not just about the camera and the issues, the technical issues we're having there. It's submitting the application for the VSA, and that takes a few weeks period. I think it's 10 weeks period to submit that and get a response. That's the maximum period. So we are saying 2 to 3 months. We've prioritised it among the team, and I'd also like to add about how disappointed I was when I found out the situation as well. And I think we all know that there are some gaps within my services and issues, and I think that's kind of maybe added to some of the delays and the confusions, and I think it's just fallen within the gaps, which is not acceptable. So as Councillor Barrington says, we do have a new interim structure, so I'm hoping that things will start to improve. I'm hoping that this is just a lull and that things will get better within the service. So once I have actual dates, I will share those actual dates.
Thank you both for your answers. Let's move on to two more speakers. So we have Barry Kushner, right, and Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie as well. Thank you.
Okay. So, Dan, it's just some questions about the budget at the end of it. I can't help it. I'm the chair of the Finance and Resources Select Committee, but I have got a couple of questions. One is that on that table, which is on page 73 and 72, can I ask first of all just a question?
I think, Barry, this is more when we reach another agenda item, which is highways report. I think that's a specific there, because we will have Karen introduce that.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
no, I'll come back.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Pictures, please.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for the report. It's great to see that there's so much going on in our city and so many things heading in the right direction. But one thing that at first I was delighted about was the car-free day. As a St. Michael's councillor, I got an email to say there's going to be a car-free day in your ward. But then opening up the email and looking at the details, it was about a week after the email was sent. And it wasn't really closing Lark Lane as such. It was just sort of making sure that there weren't any cars on the end of Lark Lane. That is a dead end anyway. So I appreciate the nod towards a car-free day. However, I think a lot more can be done for it. We had lots of residents getting in touch, wanting more details, and I asked for more details. And on, I think, the Thursday, I was told that I would get more details next week, which would have been the Monday, and the event was on the Wednesday, which wasn't really enough time for us to publicise anything or get the details out there to the community. We had residents emailing us, panicked because, Lark Lane's going to be closed, but then when we explained that it was only a portion of Lark Lane, that then led to residents not really taking it seriously or not really seeing the point. So I guess the question that I'm asking is, was there a short lead-in time for this particular event? And next time, can it be better planned and can it be a lot more effective? Because I think, I just don't think it was particularly impactful this time around.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry that you weren't given enough details of it. I think, yeah, it was. We did have a short window period to get it organised. But definitely going forward, we are starting to have the conversations now about car-free day for next year, because we do want to do something much more impactful and bigger, but we need more time to plan it and organise it and have all those correct details. So again, I'm sorry that you didn't get the sufficient details. I'm sure that's something that Karen will take away as well to make sure that we definitely improve that in future.
Thank you, Dan. So we have Councillor Melia and also Councillor Clark. You indicated you wanted to speak, so we could go in that order, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Liam kind of stole me thunder on the car free day. I was just going to come in and say, obviously on the Transport Committee side, that obviously I'd be happy to work with you and support it. I just think as well that we've got the added benefit of bringing other local authorities in the city region together on it. So if we're making a programme of like different like road closures, we can share our best practice guide as well. And then on our new trains, it was great to view them together at Birkenhead North. We're looking to hold more public viewing sessions, which will likely be in Southport. If members of the committee would like to attend, we could circulate details with the chair. I'm sure Liam would be happy with you saying that as well. Also, for everyone's information, so through the new trains, we're also pioneering battery technology called IPEMU, or independently powered electrical multiple units. And basically, they're the first type of this technology in the country, and they utilise kinetic energy recovery. So, for example, when the train breaks, it recovers the energy, so it saves on energy, which obviously then saves on money and it reduces carbon emissions, just because I thought it would be interesting for people to know. Also, for people to know as well, they've also got increased bike storage. I think it's about a third of an increase, which would encourage active travel. Another point on carbon literacy training. Do we have any dates yet, or are we still finalising it? Obviously, I'm just personally keen to attend because I missed the previous one due to health. Obviously, we've got new councillors as well. On the wildflower maintenance, I know you mentioned it. Are there actually the plans in place for the LSSL training, or is it something that we're just looking into at this stage?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, on Car Free Day, I agree. I think it would be great to work across the combined authority as well, particularly around the public transport elements. Yeah, good to share best practice. I think the battery technology with the trains is a really exciting opportunity, particularly if we can be looking at getting trains from Liverpool to Wales as well. That's a really big opportunity for us. On the wildflower stuff, don't know if Chris, if you've got a date on that bit.
I haven't got a date, I'm afraid, but I think it's pretty imminent. Laura, can you help me? Do you know the date, or Richard? No, okay, I haven't got a date as such. No problem, I'll take that away.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're moving on to Councillor Clark, please.
So, Chair, it might be that this is more appropriate for later on as well, as in the case of Councillor Kushner. So, it's just in terms of the news that NCN have gone into administration, and I wanted to ask what proactive ways to avoid the council finding themselves in a situation where a contractor becomes insolvent being thought about, and also in terms of monitoring and reviewing contracts, so we're not forced to act in a hurry when there is a crisis.
Thank you, Alison. Those are excellent points, and I think they are appropriate for our agenda item number 4, which comes up. But maybe we can answer them now. Is that okay?
So I might forget by the time we get to the agenda item in terms of the questions. So when I joined Liverpool City Council in May, I reached out to the contractors across the city and had discussions with them individually. I have been keeping a watching eye on Lime Street and had some concerns about them. So I implemented a number of things, and a couple of those things was the managing director came into the city, and the directors has been in a couple of times where I've discussed and expressed some concerns around some of the items that I was seeing, and asked them to rectify those and to put measures in place, which they have been doing. Also been receiving weekly emails and confirmation that they are still healthy and that there are no issues, and they've been giving me regular updates in terms of the company and where they are. So we've been doing some health checks in terms of if anything's out there in terms of company house, financial checks as well. But more importantly, my consultants who've supervised the project have been providing feedback and intelligence to myself. As a result, we had a number of materials that we purchased, the council ourselves. I made sure that our name was on all the materials, just in case the company went into administration, and that we put some of the materials in a secure location in one of our in the Hanover Street car park. So there isn't a lot we can do as a highway authority in terms of contractors when they are at that stage. But what we have been doing is making sure that, you know, if it did happen, and it has, that we were able to intervene quickly and resolve and come up with solutions. So what we've been doing as a team is that we have a number of options now in terms of what we can do to complete the works. And as Councillor Barrington said, we will be looking to review the design at this point in time, so there might be some changes, but there isn't a lot we can do until we heard the news on Monday that they had gone into administration. That was the first we had in terms of the full signs to say that that was going to happen. So, you know, I think that we've done our best as officers in order to make sure that we were able to protect the council's assets, and we will be very proactive going forward to try and resolve this. But it's just a watching eye now for the next 48 hours or so until we find out what the administrator is going to do going forward.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, I'm sure we will come back to Highways report, and so maybe there will be some other questions more generally as well. Okay, I also have, is there any more questions from members? Just before, okay, so I just have a few points before I forget as well, being a member here as well. So the question I have has to do, because in the report, Dan, you state that there is no target on the number of charging points for the electric vehicles yet. And so I'm just interested, how do we as Liverpool compare with other core cities when it comes to this provision of electric chargers? So that's my first point. And then my second question point has to do around consultation, public consultation, as I've already mentioned previously, because here it says that net zero report will be published in October, so it's coming up, right? And then we will collaborate with all the other stakeholders. However, this route map will already have challenges, strategic approaches, aims, solutions, actions. So I'm just wondering, you know, how can we do this better in terms of actually engaging with stakeholders first and then kind of doing our action plan. So there is that communication there, because as we all know, climate is one of these issues which is very much public agenda. You have COP26 coming up, so there is a lot of activity around that. And just my final point is around this Let's Clean the Air survey, which is public, and I know we've said let's promote it as local councillors in our wards and so on, but it would be good to do a kind of a media comms exercise here as well, so that as many people fill out this survey. I think this is really crucial, because that is actually showcasing that we are together with the public tackling climate crisis. And as I've emailed you today, you must have heard about what Birmingham is doing. So we do have to be comparing ourselves with other core cities and seeing, you know, that are a bit further down maybe in terms of agenda and clean air zones and so on. So those are my points and kind of questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of the target on EV charging points, I think I might have updated at the last select committee, and I may need to update it on my priorities list, but I've given a target that we double the number that we've got in the city at the moment by the end of this financial year. In terms of the net zero plan, so there has been an engagement session with stakeholders that's taken place. I think in essence this is going to be a sort of living document, and we will need to do lots of ongoing engagement right throughout, right up until 2030. I definitely agree with you on comparing other cities and work they're doing. I think we've definitely got to be looking at that and trying to look at best practice and learn lessons where we can.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I think that's really important, that comparison, because otherwise we don't really know where we are. Okay, thank you. And Maria, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you. I don't know how relevant this is, but I just thought I'd take advantage of Karen being here. It was about highways, actually, and I applaud everything that's gone on, and I understand it's a difficult time for us with everything that's happening with the connectivity, and we've had some unwelcome PR, as we've all read. I just wondered if there was any new process for liaising with planning when it comes to heritage sites, because I think there's only a very informal process in place now for overseeing when development is done in and around heritage. And I know there's been a lot of negative conversation around it, and I don't think it's been by plan. I think it's been purely accidental that these things have happened. And I was just wondering, can we put something in place for the future? Because I believe at the last conversation I had with an officer, there was something very loose in place. So it's really, if there's something that we can develop going forward that's more formalised to protect, obviously, buildings and sites like St George's Hall. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's something that we can take away and look at with head of planning as well.
I can just add to that. So since I've been in the authority, we now have internal planning and highways meetings, which we haven't had before. So at the meetings, that's where we discuss some of the potential plan applications. We discuss as a team. Head of planning is there in terms of what's coming forward and in terms of consultation. So we're trying to plug some of those gaps to understand that better, to make sure that in terms of highways that we don't adversely impact some of those developments and so on and so forth. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And I'll just add that in terms of our work program, we will have a report coming on planning. So that's important that those questions are addressed then. Thank you. So may I just ask us all to thank Dan and to approve this update on the report. Thank you very much. Okay. So we are now moving on to agenda item 4, which is highways and transport work update. So I will ask Karen, please, to give us a report. I trust you have all read this quite lengthy report, which came as a supplementary agenda number 1. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you there, Chair. So just a quick update. I've just pulled out the key points from the report. The report's been shared with everyone. So I just wanted to talk in terms of our improvement journey. So the Transport and Highways team have made really good progress in terms of our improvement journey. As Councillor Barrington says, we've implemented a new interim structure, and that's really important in order for us to deliver on the improvement plan. We've also brought in a number of key new staff that has really added value in terms of supporting the existing staff, identifying some of the gaps and really understanding how a highways authority should operate. So that I'm hoping that things will improve as we move forward. So over this financial year, we also have started to develop a business plan that we're pulling together in terms of what we're going to deliver this year. And then we'll move to next year, where we'll have another business plan for 5 years that really details our priorities as a highways authority in terms of transportation and highways. A couple of new things that we've included in the interim plan is that we now have a network management team. And that network management team will mean that we will be able to manage our highway network more efficiently. We'll be able to understand who's on the highway, when they're on the highway, and if they're allowed to be on the highway, which was one of the criticisms in the improvement plan. So I'm hoping with the new shape in the interim plan, we'll be able to develop processes learnings, procedures, and then we can move nicely into a service review to really strengthen our highway authority and hopefully encourage people to come and work for Liverpool, because it is a good city, and it just needs a little bit of help. So in terms of our improvement journey, we're in a good place. So obviously you're aware of the VIAM replacement schemes. So there were 5 VIAM contracts. When VIAM went into liquidation, they were on site. So we've now awarded all of those 5 contracts to various contractors, and work has started on some of those sites. Slightly slower than anticipated, but we did have to go through a full procurement process. So I'll give you an update on the VIAM replacement schemes. Walton Road traffic signals. So we've implemented most of the traffic signals on Walton Road. We have completed resurfacing. We've upgraded 3 pedestrian crossings, including tactile crossing as well. And we've installed some bus curb, drop curbs, and airboarding, and yeah, we're in a really good place in terms of the Walton Road replacement. Kingsley Road was one of the schemes that was in quite a difficult position in terms of the state of repair. We now have Heighton Asphalt who are in there, who have been really positive. We've been hearing some really good positive news from the community. There's a number of things that they've had to do. They've had to go in and identify what needs to be done in relation to the defects. They've developed a works program in terms of developing and completing the works, and they've started that process. So there's a number of things that they have to do on this Kingsley Road, and it's to do with resurfacing, drainage, and on top of this, they will also be consulting on a cycle lane down Kingsley Road as well. The consultation will happen shortly on that, and then we'll get a temporary, an experimental order in there and have a cycle lane on Kingsley Road as part of that scheme, which will be in place for an 18-month period, and if deemed successful, then can go into a permanent scheme. A59 Walton Lane, the contract's been issued there on the 27th of September. That's quite major work to be done as well. So the contractor yesterday started pre-mobilisation, which means them going on site, understanding the issues on site, and then developing understanding what the defects are, and then developing a programme and timelines. And we'll get those out to you as well as ward councillors and councillors that are interested in that as well. Byron Street, the current road crossing facilities did not have the right capacity, so what we looked at doing there is increase capacity on that scheme, and this scheme is quite a major scheme and is not due to be completed until 2022. So because of the universities coming back and the students, we have high footfall on there, so we want to get the scheme complete as quick as possible. So that's something that we're working on. Byron Street, in terms of A50, the A565, Liverpool Key Corridor, that contract was awarded to contractors on the 27th of September, and they're also doing their pre-mobilisation, which is understanding what work needs to be done, what's been done to date, and then they'll be developing a programme of works related to that as well. Then let's move on to the city connectivity schemes as well. So just to let you know, in terms of Strand Phase 1, so Strand Phase 1 is due to be complete on the 20th of October. As you most probably seen, a lot of progress has been made. Cycle lane has not been opened yet, but the carriageway is open and pedestrian facilities are open. We're looking to put the temporary cycle lane at the end of the scheme that allows cyclists to get onto the strands nicely and into the segregated cycle routes, and that will be done next week as part of the scheme that's complete on 20th of October. There will be a number of snagging items and road safety related elements that will need to be picked up, and that's standard for the scheme. So there might be some additional tweaking or work on Phase 1, and then the plan will be for us to look to go into Phase 2 in early 2022. We've undertaken a number of design reviews for Phase 2, and we want to get Phase 2 right. So we're going to consider all the lessons learned from phase 1 to make sure that we don't continue to make the same errors. As was discussed earlier, Lime Street, it's very unfortunate that obviously the contractor has gone into administration. So as of today, about 75% of the scheme has been completed. We'll wait to see what happens in relation to the administration. There are a number of options open to us, and we will share that once we can. And then on top of that, we will be carrying out a review of the design and bus facilities and active travel facilities as well on that scheme. Tyburn Street is to improve the access and public space there. This scheme was awarded as part of phase 1, and that's also nearly complete as well on that. Not much to say on that one. On to Haymarket Bus Hub. So there's been a lot of concern and anxiety from businesses in relation to the bus hub. So officers attended a meeting with residents and the mayor, and we've identified a number of temporary solutions in relation to finding some solutions and some long-term solutions. So the temporary solutions will be for us to undertake some air quality and noise quality surveys, which will be completed around about November, because that's the best time to undertake some of those investigations. And once we understand the surveys, we'll be able to do some assessments in terms of how we can resolve some of those issues that might fall out of those surveys. We are also investigating installing a green wall near the bus hub as well to reduce the impact of the hub in relation to noise, air quality, as well as the visual impact. We will not be installing any more curbside parking bays for buses, and we will be working with the combined authority in terms of the uses of the hub and the concerns identified in relation to movement in and around that area in terms of bus movement. Some of the long-term solutions that we're looking at is that we're going to look at citywide and work with the combined authority in terms of bus provision and how buses come into the city centre and move around the city centre. So that's something that I'm really committed in making sure that we are able to solve and find solutions, and that will be in our transport plan, and that will take at least a year to 18 months to really develop that and understand how buses operate in the city for long-term solutions. Rope walk. So as the proposals as detailed in the report, this is an upgrade to pavements and roads. We've installed some seating, some cycle racks, bins, and improved the lighting and improved safety for pedestrians and cyclists as well. We've also installed some real sustainable materials in that location as well. Progress to date is that we are almost complete on rope walks in terms of completion, and we're due to complete around about November this year. So that's just a general update in terms of the reports. I'm open for questions now.
Thank you, Karen. So we have 3 members here wanting to ask 4. Okay, so 5. Okay, so I'll go with Councillor Wood first, and then Laura Robertson-Collins, and then Liam, Alison, and Barry. And I have a question as well, but it might be asked before.
Thank you very much. I've just got a couple of points. It is good to see the work that's been doing, and also I think the report is much more detailed, it's much more open than it has been previously, and just to say thank you for that, and that is appreciated. And then the engagement with officers is much better. I just had 2 specific questions on these. So the first one is the Byron Street. So the people with high vis that are around that junction, have we employed people to help people cross the road again, like we did when the flyover was coming down?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Is that necessary now? Why are we picking up the cost for that? It seems like a strange thing if we're saying that adults can't cross the road because university students are adults.
I don't know how to answer that. I've got a university student myself. I don't know whether Stephen's got an answer for this, so I'll pass that over to Stephen.
I did take the same point as you about adults crossing, but it was something that the university specifically asked. I could understand it last year because obviously the routes changed midway through the term, but it is something that the university's asked for again this year.
Are the university paying for it?
No.
I'll take that back and I investigate and I'll come back and find out why.
Thank you. And the second thing is on the roadwork scheme. So there's just a couple of comments in the opportunities. For example, reversing the traffic on Sale Street and closing Sale Street at certain times and things like that. And I'm just wondering, when will that be discussed with the ward members, because that hasn't been up until now.
Yeah, we'll take that away. Sorry, I think that was raised somewhere else, and we'll take that away.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. Okay, moving on. Robertson Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Echo Councillor Wood's comments to thank Karen for bringing the report, and it's nice to actually meet you. I've seen you on videos and things. It's great to meet you. And I do appreciate that you've only been here a few months. But and I'm sorry that I was quite angry then when I heard about the university not paying for the stuff. It is quite difficult, seriously, for me to convey the frustration and the upset that has been caused to a lot of members over some of the issues in this report and some of the ways some of us have been treated by previous officers and so on. With regard to the city centre connectivity scheme in particular, I say we've got a motion on it. I'd appreciate if we could maybe take that at the end of this item so we don't have to go back over those issues again further on the agenda. But some of the issues around the connectivity scheme, I say I appreciate you're new to this, but some of it is it doesn't sound honest to me. How can one of the key priorities that says at 2.28 of the connectivity scheme be to support the implementation of a more efficient approach for bus services, unless we're taking a kind of Soviet style view of efficient approach, as in we get rid of them all? I mean, it sounds quite scary, really, to be honest. How that can have been at the heart of it, I don't know. But I say the lack of consultation and the lack of acknowledgement of some of our concerns, not over the last few weeks or months, and it is unfortunate what's happened yesterday. This has gone on for years, and we have been raising issues and we have been ignored and not listened to. I mean, what happened? How did we get a consultation that said we needed another miracle by St George's Hall? I mean, I don't know where that came from. Suddenly we were presented with a miracle. We have an amazing heritage stable fountain across the road on the other side of St George's Plateau that obviously we're being told isn't enough funding to support that. So I'd like very specifically to ask if that can be, the money can be transferred to look after the stable fountain. I know that, Maria gone, that's one of the issues that Councillor Toolan's been raising. But it just seems a very bizarre thing. I don't know where it came from, where suddenly we were presented with the need for a pool. It doesn't seem a very helpful thing to spend money on, given we now really have problems with money. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the connectivity scheme, I'm apologising that you're bearing the brunt now and picking up the pieces, but this has been very difficult for very many years, and it hasn't been consulted on properly. There's been reports bounced through in the past, and that's people not listened to, including people who've been on the cabinet, and it has been really difficult. So thank you for being here and listening. Specific thing around the fountain and the pools there. We're discussing, obviously, Lime Street and bus prioritisation. As I say, how it can be claimed that this scheme was able to improve buses, I don't know. But I hope that we can move forward. And, yeah, we can move this motion fairly soon. Thank you.
Is there any answer to this?
There were lots of questions there, but in terms of the miracle, that will be part of our... Sorry, in terms of the miracle, that will be part of the review. That will be included in the whole review as well in terms of the miracle. I can't answer that, and the officers that I've been speaking to can't answer that either. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that. I don't know, but I've been asking questions myself. So like I said, it will be part of the review, and we'll report back on that and consult on what we identify and the way forward.
Well, May I just say, because a number of us at this committee have really had this issue over the years. First it was the regeneration, then it was the highway representation committees, and all of us have been stating same things. It was like going over and over again for a couple of years over the same things. So may I just suggest here that we might want to have a special meeting here at this committee once this design has been done, so that we can kind of review it here at this committee. Obviously, if that coincides with one of the meetings that we are going to have, great. But if not, are the members in agreement that we have a special meeting just to have a look at the new proposed design? Can that be agreed, please? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to move on. We had a question. I forgot who was next. Was it Liam Robinson? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lena. And I'll just start by kind of endorsing the comments Hetty and Laura just made about thanking you, Karen, for all your hard work since you've come into the role. I think it's polite to say there's been quite a big workload you've inherited, but I also think it's well worth putting on record the thanks for the very collaborative approach you've dealt with issues with the combined authority and neighbouring districts on. That's been really, really helpful. So kind of very much want to put my thanks on record of that. And it's in that vein I wanted to sort of ask a question around the North Liverpool Key Corridors scheme, because my understanding, and please tell me if I've got this wrong, is that a small amount of that scheme that the City Council is managing actually falls in Sefton, and because of some of the issues that have happened through the kind of delivery phase with kind of elongated period of roadworks, it's caused a number of issues for a small cul-de-sac of residents literally just over the boundary. So my question really is how we're working closely with our good friends and neighbours next door in Sefton to make sure we resolve that issue that I know is causing quite a bit of issues for a small number of residents.
Pressing the wrong button. Yeah, I'm going to ask Stephen to answer this question because he knows a bit more. But yes, it is on the boundary, and in a good world, when we are a good highway authority, we should be having regular meetings with our neighbouring authorities, collaborative, and I'm keen to start setting those up so that we can resolve boundary concerns. And that's standard practice. In relation to that particular cul-de-sac, I'm not too sure whether Stephen can update us on that. He has a bit more information than I have on that.
Yes, I know the cul-de-sac you mean, because I've travelled that route a long time. And before I started here to help out, it used to frustrate me and think, why is it taking so long, this scheme? And now obviously know a lot more. Yes, we are in consultation with Sefton, and the replacement contractor on this particular one has taken longer than anticipated because there were some issues over the procurement process which are being resolved. But yes, I can appreciate their concerns, and I will flag it up to the team during the next phase, because the one thing that does happen is that when they are doing the road closures at night, they're even more adversely affected because of their access, and they've also been affected by parking. But I think they've got parking places now, but their access during works is a challenge, and I'll flag it up to the team.
Okay, thank you. Barry Kushner, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to say I think that these schemes have been consulted on, and I think there's more than once, I'm sure that they were discussed at this committee as well. A number of times they were in Cabinet, too, when I was in it and outside it, but there's a difference between being consulted and listened to and being agreed with. But I think there have been, of course, there have been some have been controversial, but I think to say there's been no consultation, I think is wrong, and that shouldn't be placed on record. I think but what I wanted to ask was some questions around some of the budget that you presented there. So just in terms of so you've got three in the first table. There are three columns. One's the estimated cost of complete works. Then there's a contingency, and then there's an LCC total budget, and then there's the variance, which is included in the LCC budget. So in these figures, what is the original contracted sum for those works?
You're going to have to bear with me on that. I need to work that out because I don't know them exactly off my head, my heart, but I don't know if Stephen does. We'll get back. Shall we bring that back? Because I need to just work that out. I don't actually know what the actual sum is.
Okay, because the other question as well is why the contingency is 30%. That seems extremely high for a building project.
Sorry, so can I answer the contingency question?
Yeah.
So the reason why the contingency is quite high in this case is because this is related to the fact that this contractor's gone into liquidation, or majority of them. The work that they've installed has been defected, so therefore they've been having to take them out again and start all over again. And the contingency allows us to deal with those overruns. A number of things that have happened industry-wise is that material costs have gone up. More recently, we were procuring some work to do with lamp columns, and they've gone up 50% in 2 months. So having a contingency means that we're able to deal with those variants within the team without delay. And I really wanted us to be transparent, so hence why I've put figures in the report, because moving forward, we want to be transparent. We want to explain costs in detail in our reports, and by having a contingency means that we don't have to keep going back and asking. That within our service we have processes in terms of approval, and that's why we have the contingency. If we don't spend it, then we won't take the money. We'll make sure that we report back on what our total spend is. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. So if you could clarify that, because it seems to me that the contingency, and you kind of implying that is over and above what the original contracted sum was. And I appreciate, obviously, there has been an increase in the cost of materials, but also you're saying there's been some defective works and it's got to be replaced. And I'd like to ask a question about that in a minute. But overall, obviously, even accepting the contingency as part of the contracted sum, there's still a 30% overspend on the total contract, which is worrying, in terms of contract management. And some of them have gone over budget, and some of them are incredibly under budget. So could you just explain why Byram Street is coming in at 21,000 when the forecast and the contingency was 380,000? Is that because it's a completely new scheme that's been, or redrawn that scheme, or is it the end of a contract? Or it's on page 73, Karen. It's
I found them. Going through the figures, bear with me. So basically, what the costs are there is that the estimated cost to complete the works for Byron Street is 305,000 there, and then the next column provides a contingency and explains the contingency. The next column there is the total budget that we have, which looks like it's an error if you look at the figures. I think that's an error.
It looks wrong, does that's what I mean? It looks wrong. So it looks like that figure should probably be.
Yeah. So
I don't know what the additional amount is. So it should be at least 380,000, maybe more.
Yeah. So that looks like an error. So I need to correct that, and I'll send that back as a supplementary to this meeting, this particular table.
Okay.
Just for the minutes, to get that correct. It's section 3.2, and it's the first table. In section, I'll correct that and I'll send that back.
Okay. And obviously, I know the Cabinet this week is has recommended the reappointment of Amy and another company that are responsible for disposing and managing and analysing these contracts. Is that right? On Friday, is that?
On Friday, it's asking for permission to go out to tender for a new professional services framework. And as part of that, because it was due to expire this month, we need to extend the current commissions for another 6 months. So it's not actually carrying them on. Well, it's carrying them on until the new framework is in place. And then we'll see who is appointed from the new framework. So it's not, they will all be bidding, but there's no guarantee that they'll be the consultants, sorry. That's what Friday's report is for.
Because given that, the question obviously that I'm raising is similar to one that Councillor Clark raised before, is that if those companies had some responsibility for overseeing the management, the progress of these contracts, and surveying them as they're going along to avoid issues of defective work, for example, and the fact that they've gone so over budget, even given there's a contingency, if that was their part of what we're paying them to do, why are we extending their contract?
I think we're in a difficult position. So when I came in, one of the actions was to review the professional framework. And in relation to procurement, it's taken slightly longer than we anticipated in terms of some of the capacity and competencies within the team. So Stephen came into the team and has been leading on that professional framework, and we couldn't get the process developed, signed off by the commissioners in time for us to meet those tight timelines. So I took the decision to extend the existing so that we could really get this professional framework done properly with due diligence and get the right amount of elements in that framework so that we can go out to tender, so we can get some really good consultants in place. So we've just extended that because we had no option, and I'm quite comfortable saying that we've extended it rather than going out and procuring and then getting things wrong. It's better that we actually extended existing so that we can really get a professional framework that's going to be fit for purpose for the future in terms of how we want to work.
Why? I mean, just as an option, and it's a question for Dan as well, the cabinet member, is why couldn't we take on temporary staff to do this sort of surveying work to ensure that this work is being completed correctly and managed correctly? Because and part of the reason for asking this is that the total amount of extra borrowing here is about 13 million. That will cost us about £650,000 a year, give or take. That's the children's centre. So we've got a very difficult budget settlement coming up, and we're allowing this in a way to happen. And I'm not. You've inherited this. You haven't inherited, Karen, and I endorse what you say. I think the way you've presented the report and everything is really good, and I'm really grateful for that. And welcome to the local authority. Welcome to Liverpool. And really for Dan, I mean, that's the seriousness of what is facing us here, and and the second question to that, it goes back to what Stephen said before, and I appreciate that this is an issue with procurement. That strategy will come to the Finance and Resources Select Committee. We'll pursue some of those questions there, but it's conceivable that those two companies, because their track record won't be taken into account, will win a future tender going forward, and we'll end up potentially in the same situation we're in now.
Thank you, Barry. I just wanted to add, that was also my question here, was in a way when we are looking at these figures and we are seeing 13 million here, which is a massive amount, and at the same time we know there are cuts coming to this council. It's extremely concerning to be seeing these figures, and where is this money going to come from? That's a very simple yet difficult question. How can we do these things better? But I just wanted to add that because that's something I wanted to say too. But Alison, please.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Alison. Just to nail it down to a question. Did you consider taking on temporary staff to fulfil that function rather than to extend the contract from an organisation that seems to have let us down?
I think I can answer the staff. So yes, I've interviewed. So there is a nationwide shortage in terms of transportation, highways and traffic engineers generally. I've undertaken a number of interviews and we just haven't found anyone suitable. So we're in a position that we're struggling to find staff. at the right level that can come in and deliver. So we have been looking. We've taken a number of interviews, haven't we, Stephen? And it's just a struggle. And, you know, and I am a member of the Institute of Highways and Transportation, and my colleagues that sit there are experiencing the same as well. There isn't a lot of experience out there, and coming to Liverpool, where other cities such as London are encouraging some of those other resources, means that we're in a difficult position. So I'm really keen to change things and encourage and get people to come to Liverpool, to work in Liverpool. So I will be doing some real positive comms around that. But also I've just approved, I think, 5 apprentice programs, and these apprentice programs will help plug some of those gaps, and some of those apprentice programs will be apprentices around sort of a level 4, which is like university level, so I can have some graduates coming in that can really pick up things and can really plug some of those gaps. So succession planning is what we have to do in terms of making sure that we can plug those gaps, because industry-wise there's just a lull out there. So I have considered bringing staff in, is the answer to your question.
Thank you, Karen, and I see that Dan has indicated he wants to say something.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I can't underestimate the mess that we've inherited in terms of highways, having to borrow an additional 13 million because we've inherited a scheme that is in such disarray, as we've discussed around Lime Street today. As Karen said, there is a shortage of staff in the industry, but also because of the reputation that Liverpool has had in terms of highways, it's not been seen as an attractive place to come and work. But thankfully, since we've had Karen coming as the new interim chief highways officer, we are seeing new talented people coming in to our highways department. I'm confident that moving forward, we are going to make the improvements that we need to make, but don't underestimate the mess that we have inherited in the highways department.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Barry, you want to make a point?
Just whether you've raised that directly with those companies that we've contracted to manage these contracts.
Issues have been raised by the interim chief highways officer.
So yes, I do hold all my contractors and consultants to account, and I'm trying to instill that same approach in my staff as well. So there's a lot of learning there in terms of the approach. A lot of them haven't got the confidence. They have the ability, but not the confidence, because that's not the world that they've been working in. So we've had some great successes in the little time I've been here. So yes, we do hold everyone to account, and if from a contractual point of view, a consultant or contractor has not delivered as per the contract, then I will deal with that under the contract, and we started doing that. So, and they know that now, so things can only get better, basically.
Okay, thank you for this. Obviously, we are also kind of going a bit towards resources and finance committee here, so let's try to kind of bring it back as well. But I really appreciate these are very important issues that we are discussing here, and we are in the right mess. So it would be good that we move on to the motion as well straight after this item. Alison Clark, you said you wanted to ask a question as well. Thank you.
So again, just to acknowledge, realise that, you know, newly come in, a lot of these problems have been inherited. But earlier, Karen, you were saying that you had concerns about what was happening with an MCN, if I've understood things properly, and that you were worried about that. Would we have had the ability then to terminate that contract earlier?
So under the contract, if we terminate, we can only terminate it for a number of conditions. If we terminated it, then we would bear all the costs, and there would be penalties on us from terminating contracts with a contractor who is not deemed to have failed. So there's not a lot we could do. And like I said, the only thing that we could do was to make sure that we we're on top of them, that we ask the questions, we challenge them, which the PMs did. So when we had a programme we weren't comfortable with, we didn't accept the programme, we pushed back. So we've been working weekly. I've been getting weekly reports on progress, and we've been pushing them and challenging them. When we've seen lack of resources on site, daily, we pick up the phone and say, what's going on here, where are the resources, where you're working. So we have been on top of them. I also spent 3 hours on a workshop with them about progress and works and how they were going to speed up the programme and deliver the project. So, you know, I'm comfortable that we've tried our best, and there wasn't anything that we could do. And unfortunately, when I got the phone call on Monday, it was really upsetting. The fact that the managing director was in 2 weeks ago. I had an email on, at the end of September telling me that everything was on track. So unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do from a council point of view.
I suppose that brings me back to the question that I was asking before about the proactive ways that we can prevent this from happening again. So I wonder, Karen, if you can say a little bit more about the sorts of things that you would like to see, you know, brought into the way we do things to stop this from happening. I mean, I wondered, what's the position over looking at things like past financial performance and the cash reserves, and is a credit reference agency used?
So there are a number of things that can protect us as a local authority when we enter into a contract, and some of those things were not done. Councillor Barrington has expressed how difficult we are, such as performance bonds, which we didn't have. We should have been in place 6 weeks. We're not in place in 6 weeks, and I was trying to resolve and trying to find solutions. So there are a number of things that we can do to protect ourselves. One thing I must say is that we are reviewing all of our other contractors and all those that we've outsourced to see in terms of where they are, because and I will be reaching out to my colleagues in the industry to find out whether there is a pattern and there's an issue and there's an impact associated with you know, the drivers, lack of drivers, materials, COVID, and see whether there is. So we will be doing a review just to make sure that we understand whether there is a particular problem. And if there is, then we'll look to identify some options and solutions. But yeah, there's not a lot that you can do really, unfortunately. But we are reviewing all the contracts that we have within our area.
Can I ask that? You know, you were saying like about performance bonds. So when there's been this review and there's going to be you know, a different way of working, could I ask that that's brought back, please, so that we're able to have a look at what you're going to do?
I think that's what was agreed, that we will have a special meeting on it. That's been agreed already.
Thank you all. Laura, could we please now move on to our item? Well, first of all, let's thank Karen for this report, and so we can move on. Thank you, and that's agreed because we've noted the report, not agreed. So if we please move on to item number 11, and that's the emergency motion, which is from Councillor Laura Robertson-Collins. If you could please introduce this. I mean, not a lot, please, because we've talked quite a bit. I would just like to add here a kind of a friendly amendment, just that, you know, the committee asks that a revised design is brought back to this committee for discussion. So just that we have that in writing there at the end. Is that okay?
Absolutely accept that addendum. Thank you, Chair, for letting me move it now at this point in the agenda. Thank you for accepting it onto your agenda. And as you say, we've covered several of the issues already, so I very much welcome the Cabinet members' support for this and what we've heard from the senior officers and the Cabinet member on the issue. Just to say, this doesn't have to be a lengthy process. I know that things have already been delayed with COVID and all sorts of other things. There are alternative designs already in existence. We know because several of us have actually seen them. They've been presented at previous meetings, including the Highways Representation Committee. So, so to move this motion, thank the Cabinet member for his support for me doing this, but him saying he's going to do this. Totally agree that we should put in writing that it comes back to the committee. That's absolutely correct. And also for me to thank yourself, Chair, for your support for me on this issue, and several other people in this room who gave me a lot of personal support. To say it has been quite difficult at times, and I'm not sure about things can only get better, but certainly it's better late than never. I would maybe change that slogan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so can we please, okay, we have Councillor Kushner.
So yeah, this puts me a bit of a quandary because I was one of the cabinet members that made the decision to implement that particular scheme with the TRO that was decided in April, and there are other schemes, and as far as I can recall, and I might be wrong, but that there are cost implications for other additional designs, some additional costs to a scheme that's already more expensive because of the delays in implementation to allow for consultation. And I think that, Chair, that you're right to say that if it's going to, that the amendment should include any additional costs to the scheme, and also that would also be subject to rerouting of buses, which was an issue before because the bus providers did not want to reroute the buses that came down along Lime Street. They were the A buses, that 86A, and I can't remember the one, 81A was it? 82A, because that could have come down through Islington, for example. So that creates an issue about rerouting. So I think in terms of for me personally, I find myself in a difficult position to support a motion criticising the decision I made previously, but definitely there are cost implications, and I think that before we take a decision on a motion, then we should be aware of what the cost implications are. And also, I noticed that the motion, Laura, makes reference to to yourself in there, but they're my issues with it.
Thank you, Barry. Now, I know this. Now, this news came yesterday about the administration. So we had an emergency motion here. Obviously, we don't know these costs yet. So what this motion really is just calling is for the review, and that it will be brought here. And I'm assuming once it's brought here, we will be made aware of all of these additional costs. So I don't think it's right to be now speculating what the costs will be, because obviously, we have this urgent situation. I mean, that's what I think. Okay, Barry?
So yeah, just the costs of the delay, because there'll be a delay in the scheme because it'll have to be redrawn, and any additional costs for any additional capital work. So there'll be two costs, and that was what was outlined in the consultation when the decision was made at the TRO, because I think Lynn was there as well. I think there were three different options that were before us, but all of them had additional cost implications for both of those reasons.
Okay, thank you. But maybe Dan, because he is now in the position as the cabinet member, so in a way it's his call, and he's already stated even before we brought this that there is going to be a review around this in his report. So I'm assuming at this point all we can do is just take the vote. I mean, obviously people can vote against or abstain. Lindsay, please.
I was just going to say, can I second it, because we haven't had anyone second it.
Sorry, Chair, can I take a note of the motion? Are you the motion? Are you happy to accept the amendment? The addendums, it's not actually okay. And Councillor Kushner, is yours an addendum as well, or are you actually moving an amendment?
I hear the question. Sorry.
Is what you've just said, is that another addendum to the motion?
I would thought it'd be sensible if it was going to come back in the friendly amendment that would include what the additional costs of the
About what we're saying. What we're saying.
Sorry, so what I said that the committee asked that reviewed design is brought back to this committee for discussion. I'm assuming that if this in this reviewed design to
Sorry to add to that, because you asked me. We're not making an executive decision or writing a cabinet report here. We're asking for a review, and it's absolutely been endorsed by the cabinet member. It's obviously the executive decision rests with Dan, and we will.
Yeah, I think for the moment this is enough. Yeah. Okay.
So just to say, sorry, Chair, so are we saying then that we're kind of asking that no decision is made on the continuation of this scheme as it stands until it's been reviewed and discussed at the select committee?
I think so, yes. This is because this is not an executive decision by us. We are just scrutiny committee. The executive decision will be eventually made by Dan and the mayor and the people who are in executive committee.
I mean, in that case, for me, what I find difficult about that, we've talked about overspending. If we're asking for the cabinet member and the executive, the directorate to suspend the scheme until it comes back and discussed here, then that will be additional costs to that scheme. Or are we?
Okay, Dan.
So it's quite clear what it's asking for in the report.
What it says is obviously the contractors have gone into administration, so we are going to have a period where work's not going to happen. So that's given us this opportunity to look at it again. If we do want to change the scheme, obviously there will be cost implications, but we've got to weigh up, is changing the scheme the best thing to do for the city? Do we want to look at better transport links within the city centre? We've got to weigh that up with the costs and the options and look at that, and that will be what the review will do. And obviously those details will come back to the select committee with those cost implications.
Okay, Karen?
Can I just add one thing? We do need to make sure that the site is safe, so we might have to do some temporary works just to make safe the site. Possession facilities, we've got Christmas coming up, we've got Christmas market, so we will have to do some work just to make the sites and location safe. And we've got Remembrance Sunday as well, so yeah, we will be doing some work in the meantime.
Okay, fine. So shall we move to the vote? I see that. I read it. It's the committee asks that reviewed design is brought back to this committee for discussion. Yeah.
Just when the decision was made at the Highways and Representation Committee, there was also a commitment that the review within 12 months. So the possibility then was that we would look at changing it, and all those extra costs and further delays and everything else that comes with that possibly was going to come down the line. So I suppose we're bringing that forward now because of the situation we find ourselves in.
Thank you for reminding us of that. I was there as well, so I quite remember that. So
the addendum of the committee after the review design is brought back to this committee
for discussion.
Yes, that's the addendum.
That's
accepted by the.
Yes. Okay, and we have a seconder who is Councillor Milia. We don't need a seconder. Okay, so are we going to take a vote? Okay, so all of those in agreement? Only members of the committee, yeah? Eight in favor, all those against? Any abstentions? No, abstention. Okay, thank you all. Okay. (10 minutes to 7). So I hope you all have good stamina for these kind of meetings in climate and environment, climate change and environment. So moving on to our report on the parks and green spaces. I trust everyone has read this. So if I can ask, please, Chris, if you could be brief giving us this report. Thank you.
No problem, Chair. As members of the committee will appreciate, parks bring a huge benefit to the health and well-being of us all, and the value's been improved more than ever during the last 18 months. But obviously with success come challenges, and sadly with more people visiting our parks comes more litter and more cost that we have to bear. But I think it's just really important to take this opportunity to thank the friends of Liverpool Parks and the volunteers whose help is invaluable in terms of helping the City Council maintain the parks assets at a time where, as I say, our resources have been particularly under pressure, not only because of the additional cost of meeting the demands caused by footfall, namely that litter clearance, extra bins, etc., but the double whammy of the loss of income from a whole range of animations and events that we would normally operate in a normal calendar year. So, as I say, just wanted to reiterate my thanks to those friends and volunteers. The report, as I say, is just a canter through really a general overview of some of the highlights in terms of parks and green spaces over the last year, that just looks at, as I say, maintenance, biodiversity, acknowledges some of the issues we've had, which are well publicised around the lakes. We have managed to secure some improvements to some of the lakes, as the Cabinet member stated, and in the Section 106 project section of this report, you'll also see there's some funding also for some other improvements. However, we're aware that, you know, particularly some of our lakes around Walton Hall Park, Stanley, in the north, and Newsham need urgent work to improve water quality, prevent fish deaths and botulism outbreaks and other issues which cause, you know, a great deal of understandable upset every year. But we require quite significant funding, capital funding, to carry out those repairs. And obviously, as with any capital funding, there is only so much that the council can afford to borrow, and therefore prioritisation of that borrowing has to come to the fore. A little mention as well around an update in terms of the partnership which we signed up to early in the year with Fields in Trust, whereby we'll be seeking to protect all our parks through a deed of dedication. Just a couple of points of clarity. I am the author of the report, and I think I could have perhaps been clearer in some of the aspects of writing it, because it's led to a couple of questions. So I do mention in the Fields in Trust protection, 99-year protection from development through a legal deed of dedication. That's the minimum term of protection. In most agreements, it is forever, it's in perpetuity. So it's important to clarify that. Also, there's some questions around the process and the timescale for the protection of the first 20 sites. And as I've acknowledged in the report, there have been some delays just simply to staffing capacity, not only in the City Council but in Fields in Trust. We've obviously had a number of individuals absent from work due to illness because of the COVID pandemic. But we're committed to getting the first 20 sites protected before the end of the financial year, and that will include the 10 major city parks. And by just in protecting those 10 sites, we would be protecting 60% of the green space in the site, in the city. So, and a quick mention there, obviously important to this committee is the work we're doing to expand cycling and walking. My sports development teams have been training leaders in the community to lead organised walks and organised cycling in our parks and green spaces in our neighbourhoods, which is really important in terms of building people's confidence to then perhaps make that next step into considering commuting or using bikes for leisure purposes rather than just simply riding around the park. So I'm conscious of time. I will shut up, but I'll be happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and I really appreciate this report. It was quite comprehensive, and it was really good to learn so much about our parks and green spaces, so I very much welcome that. Okay, we have a few questions. A couple of councillors have indicated, so Carol Sung, please, and also Lindsay Millia.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back a little bit to resources, I brought this up before in here. We cut the grass far too often. It's one of the things that drives me potty. Someone of my age remembers when the fields were covered in clover, and since the pandemic they are back covered in clover, but for a very short time, because we chopped them all back down again. So that's one of the issues. But the second issue is the banks of the River Alt. It's horrendous. It's been left, I would think, at least 20 years without anyone making any looking at it. You know, it's just a mess. It's the wildlife, if there's any in there, we can't find because it's just completely overgrown. And I just wondered that, I know the banks are the responsibility of the council, whereas the Rivers Trust looks after the water. So I have spoken to a few people, cannot get these banks cleared. And then the rubbish that's thrown into the Alt is just heartbreaking. So I just wondered whether we could have some sort of process. I never can't be done all at once, but you know, a gradual look at how we can look at the banks of the Alt. Certainly corruptive.
Yeah, that's certainly something I'm happy to take away and have a look at because you know, it's really important, as you say, to if we can restore, you know, that kind of habitat and bring it back up to standard. Then that's something we should certainly look at. You know, as I say, the report acknowledges obviously, you know, parks is a discretionary service and has been disproportionately targeted for cuts historically, but that doesn't mean we should give up. And there are lots of ways to you know, again, it's not always about money. Sometimes it will be about harnessing the power of volunteering, but just somebody taking a lead in doing that. So I'm very happy to have a look at that.
Yeah, just on 2.7, it mentioned that there's a group focused on improving green spaces. It didn't really give much more detail, so there's just a few questions from that. So who's in this group? How and when was an action plan developed? And are the details of that can be brought to this committee?
Sorry, which section of that was it? So apologies.
I think it was 2.7. So where it mentions that there was a group focused on improving green spaces.
So I can't find it. Yeah, I'm happy to bring any reports or updates you know you wish. In terms of formal groups that look at improving green spaces, we don't have a formally constituted group that does that effectively. That is my job as the Parks client, to work with our cabinet member and to work again with friends and volunteers to implement upgrades, enhancements, and to use grant money or again capital money from Section 106 to secure enhancements.
Okay, thank you. I know we have Chrissy Byrne here, yes, and she emailed and asked if she could give her statement about this report or ask a question. So I did allow her to do that. So please. Thank you very much, Chrissy, for this. And it is crucial that you are here as the chair of all of the Friends of Park forums, Friends of Parks forums. So it is crucial that we have that dialogue. I mean, I noted in my notes on this, you mentioned £450,000 we still need for the improvements of the lakes. And if there could be that joint approach in terms of funding, that we can find something. I mean, you know, I live near Stanley Park. We have LFC just there. I don't know, but you know, we need to be kind of thinking outside the box a bit, because obviously we don't have these funds. And so please, if Chris and maybe Dan as well could respond to Chris's important words there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chrissy. Yeah, obviously Walton Hall Park, we know causes problems every single year. It is basically just like it's like having a paddling pool in your back garden, and when it gets hot, it ends up just getting very, very manky, the water quality, and you know, that's the simplest way of describing it. But we are looking at solutions, because none of us like the situations we face there every year. Totally open to you know, to looking at ways of cross-subsidising, you know, parks, and looking at you know, more concessions to, you know, to create income again that's ring-fenced for the parks. In terms of the Fields in Trust process, we're still at a very early stage. We haven't got detailed maps yet, or all the land registry information pulled together, and all the legal work. There's actually a vast amount of legal work that has to be done for every single site, particularly the very complex larger parks. As you can imagine, there are lots of historic covenants. You've got to find the deeds, and make, you know, all those detailed deeds, and understand all the relationships with leases, and also in some cases there are private occupancies within the park. So it's not a quick process. I think I probably gave again poor use of language in the report when I talked about Fields in Trust coming up and surveying the parks. It was actually a lady who came up to have a look at the parks because she wasn't familiar with Liverpool. She was working from a list of sites, and she just said, I need to just come up and go out and see what Sefton Park looks like, and what, you know, because otherwise it's meaningless, isn't it, on a piece of paper. So I think I gave it a grandiose, calling it a survey was probably a little bit misleading. So but as we you know, pull together those packages of work, we'll obviously want to share those with friends, because it's, you know, it's very important that they're you know, that we're transparent, and they understand that we're you know, ultimately we're there. The purpose of that whole partnership is to protect green space from development, so we need to be really transparent through that process.
On the agenda, yeah, I mean, it's vital that we have that better working relationship with the friends groups, and if we can work collaboratively on bids and things, that's great. And I think with the Fields in Trust, we need to get that engagement right, and particularly once we've got those maps, we need to make sure that the friends groups get them first, and that you've got that chance to look at them properly and feedback what you need to feedback.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sung.
Just a quick one, Bill, going back to what we're saying about costings for parks and all that. We've got heritage parks in this city. I mean, we have fantastic parks. We've got Sefton, Stanley, and Newsham are also listed. I'm not sure where it's listed, but you know what I mean, the heritage park. And I just wondered if there was anything to do with glossaries and things like that, using that with friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we can't apply for that, but for example, the Sefton Park Palmhouse Trust applied for and was successful in getting HLF funding to help celebrate their 125th anniversary, and that's all about improving signage, animation, and some physical improvements to Sefton Park. So that's a really good example of what can be done, and we could do in other heritage parks. Absolutely.
Thank you, and Councillor Kushner.
Yeah, I think the idea of collaborating in terms of trying to take advantage of who's best in doing what to get funded is the right thing to do. I think the Friends of Norris Green Park, we have done that on a smaller scale at the moment, where we've co-funded different things to do at the stable yard wall, install what will be a cafe area. But there were a couple of things I was going to say. One, Chris, was that when the lease is being drawn up with the fields in trust, that somehow they have to be able to, so that doesn't rule out the possibility of doing concessions like that in the parks, because it may do. So I think that's something that you might just be wary of. The other thing is, I know a few years ago, the Heritage Lottery Fund came to us and asked the city what its priorities were in terms of Heritage Lottery funding. And maybe that's something that we could do with the lottery fund generally, because they have parks elements to that, but also with the Heritage Lottery Fund. And then the final thing would probably be to probably identify what the investment needs to be in these individual parks, so it's a bit more proactive than just kind of waiting. And that's probably a bit of some joint work with the friends groups to identify what that is, to work towards what can happen what can be done in each of the individual parks.
Yeah, just going back to the fields in trust. The protection doesn't prevent us from operating concessions, or indeed, leases operating cafes and things like that, or indeed holding events in cafes. And in terms of development, there are certain developments that will be allowed, but they would have to be totally in the benefit of the community in terms of particularly sports and recreation or community use. So, for example, a bandstand, it wouldn't prevent something like that had a greater community benefit. But certainly, it's primarily there to stop residential and commercial developments in a park in its widest sense. In terms of finance, obviously the attached to this report is quite a detailed 106 project summary, and that has been drawn up based on working within a lot of the parks and green spaces and understanding the needs, investment needs in terms of repairs and maintenance and enhancement in those parks, and then correlating that with developer contributions that are available to enable us to give us an income, a capital pot to do those repairs. But certainly, we're always open to working with any group around, grant funding to bring it in, because the revenue funding that we're able to direct towards this as a council is always going to be limited because of the multiple challenges we face.
Thank you. I suppose, given that we have Chrissy here, and we have a kind of a commitment, and the Barry's points were really good in terms of collaboration, that maybe there should be some kind of regular meetings between Chrissy or other chairs of other particular parks with the cabinet member and with our team on green spaces, the 5 that we have, so that there is a collaboration there and that we are actually doing something productive. So I trust, Chrissy, you can take that forward, and Dan as well, that you can make that connection and have some regular meetings so that we can improve and find out how best we can support and fund our parks. Obviously, there is massive gaps there as well. So thank you. We have Councillor Stephanie Pitchard as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to draw the committee's attention to item 7, which is the motion for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. I think that some of the things mentioned that Chrissy spoke to us about are touched on within this as well. So loss of biodiversity and losing the fish in the parks and that. So just wanted to flag that up and say let's consider this motion, because if we've got central government supporting an ecological emergency, then perhaps more can be done to protect our parks.
Thank you for that point.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back in. So I found where it says it, and it says, as part of the council's COVID-19 recovery plan, a group focused on improving green space. And then it says, the value of which has been recognised more than ever during the pandemic was established. And then it goes on to say, to support this work, the group developed an action plan and submitted revenue bids to the corporate recovery fund. Blah, blah, blah. But then we don't have any details of what the group is, who's on it, when they've met, how the decisions were made, or anything else.
Right. I chair that group. It's one of the 10 recovery themes that were approved by Cabinet a number of months back. The group is basically a great outdoors recovery theme. It's an officer group, and we were tasked with identifying actions and opportunities to build on, I suppose, the learning from the pandemic in terms of the value of green space, and actually again then try to identify projects that would really add value in terms of health and well-being as we emerge from the pandemic. So again, themes around active travel, park enhancement to help just with mental well-being and things like that. And there is a report tracking through to Cabinet, the second Cabinet in October, which summarises the work of those recovery themes, and also seeks to award funding from the Recovery Fund to help those groups to actually implement the action plans that we developed.
Thanks for clarifying, obviously, because just because it didn't specify, I was like, well, what's this group and why is there no detail?
No, that's my fault. I'm the report author and I'm the chair of that group.
Just one more thing as well. Obviously we've covered like parks and green spaces, but I've noticed that in my ward in Fazackley, we've got like quite a few like patches of land, and they're basically woodlands. So we've got things like there's a Signal Works woodland, and then there's one like called like Bluebell Woods or Fazackley Woods near the High Lane allotments. And basically like these are just like nature reserves almost that are just left. No one's responsible for them, no one manages them. And I'm like, is there anything that we can do to like look after those sorts of woodland sites?
Well, if they're LCC woodlands, then they will be subject to periodic checks in terms of the health and safety of the trees. But it's a conscious decision generally in terms of woodlands like that to actually leave them and not put in formal maintenance regimes, so that we do promote biodiversity and protect those habitats. So we like to keep those very natural compared to our more formal parks, which we cut too much.
What, him personally?
I think there is a debate we need to have, and this committee, it's not tonight, obviously I'm conscious of time, but we do need to have that discussion around maintenance and how we go forward, because it is a challenge, and it's not just about parks. I'm responsible for highways maintenance as well. And it's a very divisive issue. There are lots and lots of benefits to letting the grass grow, but equally we also get plenty of stick from members and from members of the public who expect a verge outside to be like a golf putting green. So it's one of those issues that I would welcome discussion on, because particularly as we plan our grounds maintenance and parks maintenance programs for the next year.
Thank you very much, Chris. And maybe that's something we can debate, or a motion can be brought or in this way. Okay, we have I'm assuming members have now finished with the questions. So we have a member of public. Is it Richard, please, if you wanted to? Thank you very much for that comment, Richard.
And thanks for all the work you and Scouts Flower House do across the city. Fantastic, and I think the such great reaction we've had across the city to the wildflowers has been brilliant, and thank you for letting me come to Croxteth Park. It was really good and great to see reaction from the gardeners that came to the city, and I think it would be good to try and build some sort of task force to look at those issues with the parks and how we move around biodiversity. That would be.
Thank you. So can I please move that we note this report? Is that agreed? Agreed. Finally, we are getting on to motions. So we have a couple of more motions. These are, I'm assuming that Councillor Stephanie, sorry, I keep forgetting, Pictures is going to speak on them. Yes?
Just to say that I do support both of these motions, which we will be looking at. So the first one is item number 6, and it is about a carbon tax. This is something that has been implemented around the world. I think currently it's in 25 different countries. And according to a lot of economists, it does seem to be the most cost-effective way to curb climate change. I don't know if there's anything more you'd like me to say. The motion is there for everyone to read. But yes, I will be supporting that.
Do we have any questions or any discussion? Any amendment? No? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so we are going to take a vote on this motion then. So all of those in agreement to pass? So that's passed unanimously. Thank you. And now we are moving on to motion number, item number 7, which is the bill, which is a climate and ecological emergency bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So this motion is to support the climate and ecological emergency bill, which is going to be discussed in Parliament. And like I said, this has links to not just climate change, but also to biodiversity and protecting ecosystems around our country.
Any questions or comments? I can say that I've researched this a bit, and this is a cross-party effort that is being pushed here, and it's now on the second reading. And obviously, it would be great that this is passed. And therefore, I believe 57 local authorities have already supported this bill. So I think it would be a good thing that we vote unanimously as well on this. So if we could please take a vote, if who is in agreement for this? And I believe that's unanimous. Thank you.
So can I just make sure that we get feedback on the responses? Because I know that basically the motions are asking for us to write to all the people, aren't they? So just make sure we do track back on that and get feedback too.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. Yes, so we get feedback on these motions. That would be great. Yes. And now we are, I think, have reached the end of our meeting. Is that possible? I think this is the longest meeting. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Lord. Okay, sorry. Okay. I got too excited here. So we are on the agenda. Item number 8, Scheme of Delegation Report. And that is on the pages 59 and 62, as well as supplementary agenda pages 76 and 83. If I may ask, is there any questions from members? Yes, Hattie?
Not so much a question, just a comment. We've asked previously for the financial figures to be included on this report, and it's still not there. So if that could go away and come back.
Okay, can this please be noted that we need to have finances included on this?
That has been asked in other select committees, so I'm not sure why that's not become a thing.
Okay, again, so this is a general point for all select committees, so it's really urgent that all of these have sums included. I did know that on some of them there were sums, but possibly not on all. Commissioner, Barry, Commissioner, please.
And I think the other thing was an agreement that there'd be a link as well on each item, so that if members wanted to follow through to the full report, then they could follow that through the link. That was also agreed. I know it's an issue across different select committees. They seem to be presented in slightly different ways, but I think they need to be standardised.
Could we please note that in the minutes that these delegated decisions need to be standardized, that we need to have finances there and the link so that we can find out about each one in particular? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any questions on any of these specific decisions? No? Okay, thank you. This is please now noted. We are moving on to agenda item number 9, which is submitted questions, some of which we have already discussed. So can we just note that you have seen these questions and answers? You happy with them? Agreed? Okay. And finally, agenda item number 10. We are going to have our next meeting on the 23rd of November. So hopefully I will see you all there then. I don't think we will have the review just yet before that, but we might have that as well. So thank you all very much for your attention. And this has been the longest climate meeting that we've ever had. And hopefully next one will be shorter. Thank you very much.